Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zack Rosenblatt, and Marissa Dunn.
Can't wait!
Just another ho-hum week for the New York Jets. I was putting the rundown together. I started to, and I was like, man, we're going to have to like stretch or something this week. There's nothing to talk about. And then just like boom, 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 boom. It just happens. That is life with the Jets. This is the Can't Wait podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tim McMaster, along with Zack Rosenblatt, our Jets reporter at The Athletic. Marissa Morris is our producer and third host. I got to stop just calling you the producer, Marissa. It doesn't do you justice.
You can call me whatever you want to call me.
Okay.
Happy to be here.
We do happy to be here. We
The
do have
boss.
a packed rundown to get to today. Joe Douglas spoke this week. We'll talk about his comments. Zach Wilson, at this point, it's like he's getting piled on by former quarterbacks and all these people, and we're going to talk about that. Of course, the Bills preview, picks. Zach pandering to the fan base, did a story on Bryce Huff today. We'll talk about that as well. But we are going to start with Zach going back to the trade deadline. Zach, you're spreading fake news that I think you thought upon tweeting, people will get a kick out of this.
They did, but
that's not how Twitter works. Well, 50% of them did. The other 50% were like, there's no way this was true. But just to let people know, Zach tweeted, if you missed it, back on trade deadline day, I'm told the Jets were offered multiple first-round picks for Chris Streveler, and they turned it down. And like I said, half the replies, and it blew up. The tweet did blow up. Half the replies are like, having fun with it, blah, blah, blah. The other half are like, there's no way this is true. Who are your sources? Like tagging other reporters to see if they've heard the same news. It kind of got some legs from there. So, Zach, now you know.
That just like totally exemplifies Twitter right there.
Oh my God,
Right.
so perfectly.
Just like people wanting to complain, people being like believing anything they read, not reading the room,
Not understanding sarcasm. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, sarcasm is lost on
Yes,
Twitter.
and I'm a very sarcastic person, which is often an issue on there. But yeah, that was something like you mentioned. Somebody tagged a reporter, and the reporter doesn't know me. I don't know him. And his initial tweet was, "Let me check on this." Then he deleted that and said, "I think he's joking." So, am I that convincing of a writer? Maybe.
I guess. Yeah. Good for you, Zach.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to end that bit. I only have one person that tweets at me every now and then, like the Streveler bit's getting old. I'm like, is it though? I had like 3,000 likes on that tweet.
I think we promised at the beginning of the season that we would talk about Streveler on every episode all year. So, I mean, we're not even at the bye week
if the
yet.
commenters start coming in saying that they hate all the times we joke about it, then we maybe consider stopping. But that's not.
I mean, it's been kind of relevant the past 2 weeks. So at least we've had
We haven't
see
even
what
had to
happens
make
if he
it
gets activated
and
or not.
Flacco was not happy about being the third quarterback, correct? So like that was something last week. We weren't just, speculating. So we'll see.
Amen.
That's one of the things we're going to get to, but we could throw that in right now. The way we're going, the fact that, Flacco. I mean, he tried to say the right things, right? But it's pretty clear that he doesn't want to be the QB3.
Yeah, I kind of had a feeling he like can't help but be like kind of honest for the most part, kind of thing with stuff like this. I mean, it's easy to understand why he's frustrated. So he was asked basically like, first, like, were you surprised? It's like, yeah, I mean, I was surprised and I was disappointed. And then he threw in the line like, but I'm not going to try and make, a big stink about it because I'm trying to be a good teammate and all that stuff. But yeah, it's not like he did anything wrong. It's just, it was funny. He was asked like, what was the reason they gave you? And his answer was, whatever you guys got told is what I got told. So he's basically, he didn't even like pretend like say the same thing. He's like, whatever you guys said is probably what they told me, kind of thing. And what we were told Robert Saleh like clarified it on Monday a little bit. It still doesn't make a lot of sense unless they just believe Mike White's better than Joe Flacco, I guess. Like, I don't know, like they just want in the event that Zach Wilson gets hurt, they want Mike White to be the guy that goes in so they can evaluate him essentially.
That is the definition of a backup quarterback. So it makes sense. The guy, but
but like I've never seen a team like do the second and third, tango with their quarterbacks before like this shuffle. So that part's weird, and you get why Flacco's like that. And I do wonder if he hoped they would trade him at the deadline or I don't know, like this wasn't asked, but would he ask for a release at some point? Would he would he want to retire? Like he's 37. I don't get the sense he thinks he still can play. So I don't know. It's a weird spot. But who knows? Crazier stuff has happened than a team needing to go to their third quarterback too. So I'm sure they want to keep him around.
Well, there's always Strevler.
And there's always Strevler. Yeah.
It is interesting. If he did ask for a release at this point, he's been a team guy. He's done what they asked him to do when he came in here. He's played some football. Do you think they would grant it?
It's a very good question. I don't know. That's an interesting one. I guess it would depend on like how if he was like, can you guys release me or I'm gonna retire? Like then they maybe let him go. But yeah, I mean they've held steadfast in guys demanding things from them. So I don't know.
Yeah. Although I feel like it's different
that is
when
an
a second-year
conversation,
receiver demands a trade and a
Totally.
37-year-old quarterback.
No,
asks
you're
for a
right.
trade.
I wonder if they would grant it. I mean, I don't get the impression he's asked for that. But it's a very interesting discussion, and maybe they told him like we just want to get Mike White reps on like game day, like with the twos. But like if Zach Wilson actually got hurt, like you'd have a chance to start still. Like I don't know what those conversations are because like he wouldn't tell us obviously. Right. But he is certainly frustrated by it. He signed with the Jets this offseason because he thought he was going to be the number 2 quarterback. I don't think they gave him more than like the minimum. So he probably would have anyway. But it's something to keep an eye on at the very least.
All right, let's move on and let's get to Joe Douglas's comments. I can sum Joe Douglas's press conference up in one sentence. That is, Joe Douglas loves all of the Jets. Like that. That's what came out. Yeah. He loves Denzel Mims. He loves Elijah Moore. He loves
Zach Wilson.
There's a lot of love going around with Joe Douglas.
Just a big level guy. Just a teddy bear.
I mean, obviously he was asked about all those players, right? Why didn't you trade Mims and Moore? And he didn't trade Hall either. What's going on with Zach?
He didn't say he loved him though. I don't know.
Good point. Actually, I didn't see was he asked about?
No, he wasn't asked directly about Bryce Hall. It's honestly, the problem is it was on Zoom and that setting's always hard to like ask follow-ups. And, we were pretty focused on the Zach Wilson and Elijah Moore stuff, obviously. So, but yeah, that probably should have been asked. And, but yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like the Mims thing from before the season with Bryce Hall. I think they see that he's a starter. They feel like he can start if they need him to. And so if like, worst case scenario happens, guys get hurt, he goes in. We saw that with Mims. I'm sure we're going to get into Mims because Salah was raving about him today. They kept him because of the event that Corey Davis got hurt, and that's what happened. So
worked out. Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like from everything Joe says, Moore's still part of this team's future. Maybe that's true. Maybe it just wasn't the right time to deal him. Who knows? We'll find out as the future unfolds, I guess. And then we'll get into Zach in a minute. But let's talk about Mims and the follow-up. This is a guy who is obviously like, it's been such an incredible roller coaster. And we've talked about him a lot lately on this podcast. But now the coaches keep talking about him, and he got 44 snaps last week. And now Robert Saleh today saying more good things about this guy and what he's able to do. He's kind of pulled himself back from the doghouse.
Yeah. I think that's the right way to put it. Because I asked Saleh, like, what has he shown you these last few weeks? And Corey Davis is not going to play again this week, so he's going to have a role again. And Saleh interestingly pointed out that like 3 weeks ago, which I think is before Corey Davis had gotten hurt, he said like 3 weeks ago, it's like something clicked with Denzel or something flipped, or, maybe he got the feeling that he was going to play soon or something like that. Or maybe it's probably because of the Elijah Moore stuff, honestly, because I think that's around when that happened. But he said something clicked, and I get the impression he just started having some really good practices. You could see that maybe he started working harder, because, when you hang the carrot in front of a guy that you might actually play, like I'm sure that helps. And so he flipped the switch. And then when they put him in that first game without Elijah, he was really good in run blocking, as we talked about after that pod. This last week, he had that great catch and run, still pretty good at run blocking. And so then the follow-up that was asked to Saleh is if Mims is still going to have a role when Corey Davis gets back. And he pretty much said, absolutely, he will. And it's such an interesting journey in the career life and times of Denzel Mims, because it's been such a up and down and crazy career for him so far, and he's only in his third year. But I think the talent is clearly there, and I've talked about this a little bit this week with some people. But I am curious to see like if he keeps on this upward trajectory, what this means for this offseason, because they're going to need to clear cap space somewhere. Bless you, Marissa. I saw you just sneeze.
Thank you. I muted myself.
So Corey Davis is like a real candidate to like be a cap casualty next year. And I think you feel way better about that. He's a leader, so it's a tough cut. But that's the business. And if Denzel Mims keeps on this upward trajectory, he's clearly got a higher ceiling than Corey Davis, I think, with his athleticism. So if you can just plug in Denzel and Corey Davis' spot, you don't have to go and spend money in free agency. Don't have to use a high draft pick. You go into next season feeling really good about at least 2 of your receivers with Garrett Wilson and Denzel in theory. So I'm going to be very curious. That's one of the things I'm going to have my eye on over these last 9 games is Denzel Mims, his role, how much they use him, how he does with those reps, and like what that means for next year. Because he's one of the ultimate, like, they could swing in a bunch of different directions on what they do in the offseason based on how he plays.
You mentioned Corey Davis being, a leadership guy on this team, but he's also been a guy who just can't seem to stay on the field. And you got to take that into account. So like injured last year for a stretch, now injured again this year. I mean, how many games can you depend on Corey Davis to play from year to year? So I think all of that makes a whole lot of sense. And maybe feel good about 3 receivers, depending on what happens with Elijah Moore here the rest of the way, because obviously he's got the skills, right? I mean, the guy has the talent to be part of what could be a great 3-guy receiving core. All right. More Joe Douglas talking about Zach Wilson. He said, look, we're 4-1 with Zach as our quarterback. I'm sure he'd say he'd want those throws back against the Patriots. He also had 9 explosive passes in that game. There was a lot of good to take away from it. He basically said he wasn't as bad as people are talking about in that Patriots game. So you can look at things Zach has done and say that was good, that was good, that was good. And it seems like at least what he's speaking about, that's what Joe is choosing to do right now, as far as his the public statements about Wilson, is to focus on the little good things and not worry about the really horrible things and the overall performance that we've seen.
Well, and I'm sure that's how they're trying to make themselves feel better on top of all of that, honestly. I don't know. It's kind of had this conversation ad nauseum at this point. Although it was never as bad as it was on Sunday, but he's just so much better when he stays in the pocket, gets to the ball quickly, than when he gets out of the pocket, spends more time. Like, I think there's been some stats this week that, as dating back to as long as True Media has like followed statistics, there's never been a quarterback who has like a worst EPA, expected points added, essentially like saying like how good you are relative to like the average kind of thing, like a WAR kind of thing. There hasn't been a worse quarterback when he holds the ball more than 2.5 seconds in the last like 22 years than Zach Wilson. And you can point out the stuff that he does well. He had that throw to Garrett Wilson. He had the touchdown pass to Tyler Conklin. The talent is clearly there, but there's more bad than good these last few weeks. And it's concerning. Like, again, this is stuff that we talked about, but you can keep saying he's playing good defenses, and that's fine, but eventually you have to overcome that. You're the number 2 overall pick. Like, he should. It's weird because this draft class of quarterbacks has been a disaster. Like, everybody from that class isn't playing particularly well. But they drafted him to be their guy, and he hasn't really shown that he's ready for that yet. And we're gonna keep talking about this all year if they keep losing. This roster is good enough to win games if he is average or if he is good. And if he is bad, then they're not. He's the X factor. The quarterback is the X factor, and it's an unfortunate spot to be in because it's the most important position, obviously. But he hasn't shown me enough to believe that he can turn it around yet, and you hope he does. He's still young. Some of his mistakes are fixable. I think a lot of the stuff, like you mentioned how some quarterbacks have been criticizing him. Like Dan Orlovsky had a pretty good breakdown of, I think it was the second. Maybe it was his first pass of the game.
It was the first pass of the game.
First pass, the second one was to Mims. Yeah, the first one was to Carter. It was like, so his first read, his first option or whatever was obviously Michael Carter, like a quick screen. And Zach Wilson just he looks forward, he sees there's a defender there, and when he snaps it, he just immediately turns and throws it to Carter, just knowing that's where he's supposed to go. He doesn't look that there's a defender right there. It's a bad throw, bad incompletion. And that's like an example of some of the things that maybe isn't getting talked about as much as when he gets out of the pocket and when he makes a bad throw and picks it off. I think the more concerning thing, honestly, is that stuff where he's not good at getting beyond his first read. When his first read's not there, a lot of the time his his reaction is to immediately start running out of the pocket. Sometimes you have to if the pressure's there. I don't think every single time he's had to run away. And yeah, so you've seen a lot of plays where guys are open downfield, he's not seeing them, and that's concerning. Like that, like a lot of people want to compare him to the Josh Allen stuff. I don't think Josh Allen was making the same sort of mistakes and he was also a physical freak and he can break guys. When he's running, he can break tackles and all that stuff. So it's not really a fair comparison anyway. But I don't know. It's if he doesn't overcome that part of it where he's not good, he can improvise in the sense that he can get out of the pocket, but can he improvise in the sense that finding the second, third, fourth read when the first one's not there? And he hasn't really shown that yet, and that's a concern.
Yeah, Daniel Jeremiah kind of spoke to that. He said last week from NFL Network, Wilson spending 80% of his time trying to create, 20% of his time being a distributor. That needs to flip, which makes a lot of sense. Like, you don't have to be the star. Just get the ball to the talent that you now have around you. Like, there was a time this franchise probably needed the quarterback to be the 80% creation guy, but that's not true right now. And then kind of more, and this was kind of a different comment, but Ryan Fitzpatrick also speaking out, criticized that the Jets had to bring in John Beck last season. People quickly jumped on that and said, Greg Knapp was supposed to be the guy who was kind of, helping Zach come along in his rookie season. And of course, tragically, Greg Knapp passed away, and then they scrambled. They ended up with John Beck. But Ryan Fitzpatrick called that a red flag, basically, that they had to do that and that it was coddling of him. The one guy to defend Zach Wilson this week, Josh Allen, who came out and said, you know what? In my second season, I threw 3 interceptions against the Patriots too.
So he made the Josh Allen comparison.
And he said that was a turning point for him, throwing 3 picks against the Patriots. So
I thought that was the most interesting part of the quote. He wasn't necessarily even saying that like Zach can be like me. It's more like that's where like your eyes open up maybe a little more and you're like, all right, I can't do that again. But the worry with Zach is that he's thinking too much anyway. Oh God, Connor is in the back. I don't know if you guys know this. Sorry, guys.
Second week in a row. He misses us. We know it.
He said
hi, Connor.
Big dubs this weekend, I saw. No chance without Dunn making the plays he did.
He's talking about Michael Dunn being the key to the Browns' victory.
They don't win without.
A classic Connor chime in there. These pods at the facility, Zach, I don't know. You might have to.
I know.
You might have to wait till you start going.
I was like, all right, maybe he's not going to come in today. He knows I'm in here. Maybe
he's 100% watching, like waiting for the perfect time. We know how he operates.
What were we even talking about? I don't even know.
Zach Wilson.
The Josh Allen comparison.
The Josh Allen. All right, Josh Allen. Yeah. So yeah, you don't want Zach to be like overthinking everything, which he already does. So I don't know. I think we're really gonna find out what he is these next few weeks, like how he responds to what just happened. Because everybody's saying he doesn't listen to all the noise. He says he's not on social media. He's finding out about it. Everybody is talking. It's a national thing now. It's not just New York. It's not just us criticizing him. It's Dan Orlovsky. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick. He did it again. Not even just the comment that I saw. He was in the pregame show yesterday. He was talking about Zach Wilson in the same way, like pretty much the same comment. Orlovsky, I think Kurt Warner tweeted about him. I think they're talking about him all like the shows on ESPN and stuff like that. So like everybody's talking about him. He certainly has heard about it. So how he responds to this, how he responds to everybody doubting him, everybody criticizing him, everybody saying he's awful outside of the pocket. Like if he doesn't change the way he approaches those situations, then it's on him at this point. And so it's good if he can respond to this in, a couple of years from now, he can point to this game as a turning point for him, then everybody would be very happy with that for sure.
All right. One more thing back to Joe Douglas and the trade deadline is the fact that they actually did make a trade last week. We should touch on that. Jacob Martin sent to the Broncos. He will help fill the void left by Bradley Chubb, who was sent, of course, from the Broncos to the Dolphins. It basically is a pick swap where the Jets end up with a 4th rounder instead of a 5th rounder in the 2024 draft, not next year's draft. So some draft capital down the road. I saw some grades that were fairly negative on the Jets on the fact that, hey, Jacob Martin's a guy that they gave a contract to here in the offseason. Yeah. And now you're just moving up a slot, basically a round to get rid of him, and that maybe they didn't get enough back for him. That said, I mean, obviously it's a position where the Jets have plenty, and this will lead us to Bryce Huff afterwards. But how did you kind of view this one, Zach?
Yeah, I get the contract thing, and they gave him a 3-year deal. I think they really did envision like a role for him in the pass rush. But they signed him before the draft, which is it's always like a weird thing about NFL free agency is that it's like a month and a half before the draft. So they signed Jacob Martin not knowing they're going to draft Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens in the draft. And then there is the Bryce Huff factor. They didn't play him the first 3 weeks, and he's really made an impact in the pass rush, which is pretty much what I wrote about. And so they have Jermaine Johnson coming back off injury. They have Bryce Huff, who they feel like they need to have out there. And so there's not really going to be snaps for Jacob Martin. He's a veteran pass rusher. There's some value in that. Yes, you spent some money on him, and there's going to be like a $2.5 million dead cap penalty, I think, next year. You do save a little bit of money. I think it's pretty valuable moving up from the 5th to the 4th. Like I tweeted this. I think it's more valuable to do that than even get like a late round, like 7th or 6th round pick or something like that.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Like
you have a better chance of getting a good player the higher in the draft you are. So that's the goal at all times. So, and I get like if more picks in theory looks good on paper if you're making a trade or something, but I was fine with the trade. I think it made a lot of sense. They have a surplus of pass rushers, which is a good place to be at. And now it's gonna be interesting to see how that rotation looks. Because he was playing probably like, 10, 15, 20 snaps a game. I think he played double the snaps of Bryce Huff. So there is some snaps there to be had. Vinny Curry is back, so that kind of chops away at some of it. But Jermaine Johnson, I think, is going to start playing a bigger role as the season progresses. And then you have Huff, who literally is producing pressure at a better rate than pretty much anybody in the league, although it's in a specialist role. But it is pretty wild, and you just like look at the analytics of how he's played.
Let's get into that. You wrote a story. It's out today on The Athletic, by the way. If you want to read it and you're not a subscriber yet, you can join The Athletic for $1 a month for 6 months. Go to theathletic.com/can't wait, and you can read the story that Zach just put out this morning. You got a lot of analytics in there. Good quotes from teammates about this guy. The one thing that off the top that stood out is how fast or quick, I guess is the word, right?
Yeah.
How quick he is off the line. Because no one is quicker. Now, granted, it is a limited number of snaps, so he's ready to go when he's out there. But he is quicker across the line of scrimmage than any other defensive front player in the NFL right now.
Yeah, 0.65 seconds. I think it's per next gen. Myles Garrett is second in 0.7 seconds. So like a half a second is like a lifetime when you're rushing the passer. Like that's not like. Again, Myles Garrett is playing every snap, and he has to go on rundowns and stuff like that. Like Bryce Huff, when he gets out there, all he has to do attack the quarterback. Like that's all he has to do, which helps for sure. But his speed and his athleticism is what makes him such an interesting player. Somebody said Dan Botter just said twitchy. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And I straight up asked him like, so how do you do that? And he like told me, he's like, so I have, I listen to the cadence of if they're going to do a hard count or if they're going to snap right away. I'm looking at the quarterback as soon as it snaps. I can tell when it's about to snap, and I'm good at. I don't think he's really. I'd have to double check, but I don't think he's been penalized for neutral zone infraction this year. So he just like knows his job and he does it really well. And he's the kind of guy that winning teams have. A guy that is really good at his role. Like they don't need him to be a run stopper because they have the other guys to do that. So he comes in on third down. He makes an impact every single time. The numbers back that up. I think the stat that jumps out was from True Media when he's like not in the game and when he didn't play those first 3 weeks. I think they were getting pressure like 31% of the time. When he's on the field, since he's been back, they get pressure 50% of the time. So like half the snaps he's in there, they're even if it's not him, like they're getting pressure on the quarterback. So that's he's a valuable piece to have. He's young. He's an undrafted guy, so he doesn't cost much. So he's a guy that, like I said, that's kind of like role player that winning teams have. And it's been impressive to me the way that those first 3 weeks didn't really deter him. And he came right out, has made an impact as a pass rusher. I'm curious to see what it would look like if he started to play more, like if there were injuries or whatever, if they asked him to do a little more, if he could handle that. Because if he could become a good run stopper, then you have a very solid starting defensive end. So he's a good piece to have for the future and somebody that I think they'll try and keep around.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wonder about is like if the snaps increase, does the
what would it look
production
like? Yeah.
wane a little bit? And I will say this, like early in the season when they weren't getting at the quarterback and all that stuff, there was criticism about the rotation that Robert Saleh likes to
You haven't
run,
really heard
right?
that in a while, yeah.
No, but Bryce Huff is an perfect example
Yeah.
of what's good about that, right?
Yep.
That you have a guy like this that you can have out there for 12 snaps a game, and for those 12 snaps, he's an absolute beast. And who knows what he would do if he had 25?
Yeah. I mean that's like the balance here, because they obviously see how good he is in those snaps, but you also have to wonder like if like the team just blocking him every play or whatever, then are they going to be able to stop him better because you're preparing for him, as opposed to you throw him out there when they don't expect it, or even when they do expect it, and you have this very fast guy who, you know, maybe he just replaced Vinny Curry, who's more of a strength guy, and there's two wildly different skill sets. So that like you said, it's a perfect example of the benefit of the rotation. And the thing about this rotation is they have the players to do it too. Like they pretty much everybody they wrote in there. I mean, maybe not Nathan Shepard. I don't know if he should be playing as much as he is. He hasn't been so bad that like you've noticed them though. So they have all these guys that are good enough to play. So you get Quinn Williams a breather every now and then. You get Carl Lawson a breather. You get JFM a breather. And so then in the fourth quarter, which is why the defense has been so good in the fourth quarter, they get pressure. So that's I'm going to be interested to see if Huff's role increases at all with Martin Gunn. I think that's something to keep an eye on.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll preview the Bills game and also make our picks for week number 9. We'll be right back.
Reserve Bar is your online source for premium and luxury spirits, wine, and champagne. And now Reserve Bar offers same-day delivery. Reserve Bar has a vast lineup of rare and hard-to-find bottles, premium brands, celebrity spirits, and limited releases that you just won't find at your local store. No one does spirits gifting better than Reserve Bar. Looking for an elevated gift? ReserveBar.com has you covered, and you can have that gift delivered right to your door. Even better, turn that spirits gift into a cherished memento with custom engraving, perfect for birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, any holiday, you name it. Getting into home bartending? Reserve Bar has everything you need. Spirits for the shelves? Sure. But they also have every barware tool and glass you'll need. If you want to try, visit reservebar.com today and use the promo code WAIT to save $10 off your purchase of $75 or more on spirits, wine, or pre-made cocktails, but only when you use our special offer at reservebar.com with the code WAIT. That's reservebar.com, code WAIT. This offer expires December 31st, 2022. By now, you've heard us talk so much about Liquid Death because we're all pretty obsessed with it. You may start noticing there's some strange tall boys of beer in the bottled water section of your local stores. Well, it's not beer. It's actually mountain spring water from the Alps, and it's called Liquid Death. And let me tell you, it is amazing. Why is the water called Liquid Death? Well, because it will brutally murder your thirst, and their infinitely recyclable tall boy cans are helping to bring death to plastic bottles. They also donate 10% of the profits from every can sold to help kill plastic pollution. Plastic isn't actually recyclable anymore, and most plastic you throw in a recycling bin actually gets sent to a landfill. Liquid Death is not only great tasting water, but it's truly helping our environment. Liquid Death also comes in 3 different flavors and sparkling, which is personally my favorite. If you want to try Liquid Death, go get Liquid Death at your local Whole Foods Market, Target, and Stop & Shop stores, or find a Liquid Death retailer near you with the store locator at liquiddeath.com/wait. That's liquiddeath.com/wait.
All right, this is going to be it's a big game, obviously. It's the Bills. They may be the best team in the NFL. They're certainly the best team in the AFC East. The Jets have lost 2 in a row. You know, Chris Berman used to always say, nobody, what did he say? Now I lost the line.
I can't think of it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Well, it's time for the New York Jets to circle the wagons. The way things have gone the last couple of weeks, the criticism of their quarterback. Here is a chance to kind of shut everybody up if you can go out there and beat a team that is planning to play in the Super Bowl later this season. That said, it's going to be a really tough task. So let's get into it a little bit, Zach. Let's start with Josh Allen. Might as well start there. He's the guy that makes it all work for this Buffalo team. And when you think about Josh Allen, and we talked about him a little bit earlier. It wasn't immediate. He wasn't a star as a rookie. It took a couple of years, but now he is maybe the best quarterback playing right now in the NFL. The strength of this Jets defense, besides that front, is the cornerback. You get DJ Reed and Sauce. We've talked about it so much. The Bills are averaging the most yards passing in the league, 314 yards per game. Stephon Diggs, obviously a superstar. He's over 100 yards and a touchdown per game. That's where I think the most fun when you think about this game is, right? Is Josh Allen versus Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed.
Yeah, so I was on the Bills podcast. Marissa, what's the name of it? Just so you shout it out.
The Buffalo Beat.
The Buffalo Beat with Joe.
Joe Buscaglia. Yeah.
Joe Buscaglia. Didn't want to say his name wrong. As you know, I'm bad with names, so I just try to avoid it at all costs. Yeah, I was on there because he was talking. We were talking about how he asked me like who's like the top receiver that Sauce Gardner has gone against so far. I said Jamar Chase, and he did a great job against him. And he was saying about how Stephon Diggs is funny in that if you're a corner that talks a lot of trash, that almost gets like Stephon Diggs more riled up and makes him want to beat you.
We saw it
more.
like
2
weeks ago. Yeah. Or whatever that was.
Or he said against the Packers with
the Packers. Jair. Yeah.
So he's going to like let you know if he beats you kind of thing. And so I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I think this is going to be, we talked about with the Packers game that the matchup was more like Sauce versus Aaron Rodgers than like Sauce versus whoever their receivers were. And I think this one is a combo, which makes it the hardest matchup he's had this year. He's not going to be on Diggs the whole time. They're going to move Diggs around. Gabe Davis is very talented as well. But Sauce Gardner versus Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs is about as hard as it gets in the NFL. Maybe the hardest matchup in the NFL, honestly. So seeing how this secondary holds up with their toughest test yet is going to be very interesting. This is going to be like the real test of like how good this defense is, because I think they've proven they're good. But are they elite? And you know if you're elite if you can stop the top quarterback in the league, arguably, top receiver in the league, arguably, really good running game. Gabe Davis is very fast. They have a good offensive line. Like this is gonna be a real test. And if they want a chance, I mean, Zach Wilson obviously is the number one key. If he doesn't turn it over, you have a chance any week. But if the defense can force a Josh Allen turnover, if they can keep them out of the end zone, like that, this is their best chance of winning is by doing it via defense. Maybe you get some points on defense. Like that's, if you want a major upset or if you want to keep it close, it's going to be Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Quinnen Williams, somebody up front. That's going to be somebody making a play that causes a turnover. And if that doesn't happen, if they don't force any turnovers, they don't have a chance.
We talk about getting to the quarterback, and Allen's only been sacked 11 times this year. Part of that is his escapability. Part of that is they have a pretty good offensive line. Part of it is you can't bring him down once you hit him, too. There's all of that. He's just a hard guy to deal with. But you have to be careful, too. And that's one thing that I assume that they're preaching at Jets camp all week this week is like it needs to be a controlled rush, right? Because he can escape. He can burn you. He's averaging over 40 yards rushing a game, I think, this season. So you need to get pressure on him, but you can't leave the lanes.
Yeah.
Is there any world where they even use like a spy or anything like that? Or is it just up to these linemen to not lose their lanes?
It's a good point, because I think you even saw with the Patriots last week, there were some spots where Mac Jones just had a free lane and he got some yards. They don't blitz. The Jets are never going to be a team that blitzes. So it is going to be interesting to see if they do have a spy of some sort, because Josh Allen, there could be a guy there and he can run through them. Like he's a specimen. He's 6'6", 260. Like they don't make guys like him. He's maybe the first. Him and Cam Newton are probably the only quarterbacks ever where you could be like, you're not scared when they run the ball. Like you're scared when Zach Wilson runs the ball. You're scared when Lamar Jackson even runs the ball. Sometimes he's faster than everybody is the difference. But that's the thing. The play is never over with the Bills. Obviously, you have to defend everybody on the field, and so if they let Josh Allen get going on the ground, it's going to be a long day as well. So that's the thing. They need when they're attacking Allen. Sorry, when they're getting after him, like even if they're pressuring him, like they have to keep in mind the possibility he's going to get by them. So you hope that they're able to counteract that in some way, and it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. You said it. I mean, if they're going to be in this game, it has to be low scoring, because let's flip things to the other side of the ball. Even if we get the Zach Wilson performance that we kind of all hope for, seeing this Jets team continue to progress against this Bills defense, that's not going to mean like 28 points probably. It's gonna maybe, maybe 17. I don't know, but like it's gonna be tough. We've talked about Zach Wilson. It's always a good defense. Well, here's another one. So how does he kind of turn things around? The Bills defense, the secondary is great, and they can get to the quarterback as well. Greg Miller and Von Miller, 11 sacks. The secondary has 11 picks this season. So what do you think the game plan is to attack that defense? Because it's a defense that it's not like some defenses this Jets team has faced where they're great against the run, but you could probably pass on them, or vice versa. It's solid against both. So there's no Breece Hall. How do the Jets attack it?
Yeah, I mean, they don't have many weaknesses. I would say if they do have one, it's at safety because both their starters might be out. So I think you see a lot of tight ends. I think they probably are going to run a lot of 12 personnel. Maybe Conklin has a big game, or they target him a lot. Again, like I say every week, get manufactured touches for Garrett Wilson. In theory, you should do that for Elijah Moore. I don't really know what his role is at this point. But they need to get the running game going. They didn't get it going last week. They kind of got away from it. You don't have Breece Hall anymore, like you mentioned. You have a couple of guys that can grind out tough yards. These aren't guys that are going to get 25-yard runs. But if you can grind away some clock, I've been saying all week, if they want a chance at winning, I think they have to score first. Like I really think getting ahead you're not going to be able to come back against the Bills because I don't think they let up. So if you can get ahead 7-0, 6-0, 2 field goals, something like that, and you can run out the clock, keep Josh Allen off the field as much as possible, don't turn the ball over, maybe protect a little bit better than they did last week. I think Von Miller's banged up, so maybe you hope that he can't wreak havoc as much as he normally would. I'm doubtful on that, especially if he's going against Cedric on the right side. But they basically have to run a perfect operation. They don't need to be perfect in terms of like making 50-yard plays every play, but they need to be perfect in the way that they don't make mistakes where they shoot themselves in the foot, where Zach Wilson just airs the ball out as he's trying to throw it away, and or guys fumble it or guys drop it. Like they need to make the plays when they're there because they're not going to be there that often.
How much we've talked about special teams this year and how it's generally been good for the Jets. Not last week, missed a field goal, made mistakes. How big would a special team something this week, right? Like you talked about, getting a defense touchdown, a special teams turnover, a big return. They can't miss a field goal. Like Zerline has to be perfect.
Yes,
that's going to be key too.
Yeah, and Brady Mann needs to play better. He hasn't really been putting the defense in
because they're going to punt
last week. They're going to have to punt. So he's kind of an X factor in a way. Although the Bills can move up the field anyway. But the special teams. Yeah, if they could get a blocked field goal, force a muffed punt or something like that would be huge. Their special teams has been really good other than last week, and maybe not the Browns game, the one before that. I can't remember who it was at this point. Was that the Ravens? Yeah, because that was week 2. So the Ravens game, special teams is bad. That'll be. I mean, defense and special teams has kind of been the formula for them all year, and it will be on Sunday as well if they want to win.
All right, let's move on to our pick segment presented by BetMGM. As always, we welcome in a listener. This week it is Stuart Chalawa. I already got it wrong, Stuart. We even practiced before we started. Chalawa, right? Chalawa.
There you go.
I got it. All right.
Do we have to mention?
Yes. Go ahead, Marissa.
No, you can take it away, Tim.
I was going to bring my hat, but Stuart, a Syracuse guy, and he's
so
the guy we spoke
schools
about a couple of weeks ago who ran into Zach in the airport, right?
Very cool.
Yes, I accosted him
No. It was a pleasant surprise.
That's awesome. We love to hear.
Yeah, so now we've had Arizona, Maryland, and Syracuse. It's just who would have thought that we had fans from each of those schools?
Yeah,
crazy. The Orange have fallen on hard times here after the 6-0 start, although still ranked number 20 in the new playoff rankings. But back-to-back losses to Clemson and Notre Dame. Stuart, are they going to turn things around this week?
I hope so. I'm optimistic.
All right. Well,
good attitude.
The listeners have kept things going too, as we on YouTube taking a look at the standings for the pick'em so far. I'll read them off for those of you who are listening. 1 and 2 last week by Seamus, so he opened the door, a crack for us, and we did not for the most part, capitalized. But Seamus was 1-2. He got the Eagles right. Three of us picked the Jets last week. That was maybe a big mistake. Marissa stayed away from it. But overall, the listeners still in the league, 13-11 for the year. Zach, 12-12. Then it gets ugly. I'm 10-14.
Marissa back at the
Marissa
bottom.
9-15. Me and Marissa 1-2 last week as well. Zach, you bounced back a little bit, 2-1 last week. Jets actually the only game that you got wrong. And with that, we're going to one more question before we get to the actual picks from you, Stuart. I know, obviously, a Syracuse fan. That makes you a great human being. But how did you become a Jets fan?
My dad was a fan. I started watching probably back in the mid 80s, Ken O'Brien times. Then after I graduated school, got a job, bought tickets. I've been going to the Jet games pretty consistently since 2004. I probably make about 6 to 9 games a year with one road game. So
that's awesome.
It's been an interesting ride the last 10 years, but we'll see. Hopefully things are going to be on the up and up soon. They have a ton of talent, so I'm optimistic.
How has this year felt different than the past few years?
This is this year, this roster, they have so much young talent. Like even when you look at the Mark Sanchez years, those guys were hired guns. These are a lot of young talent under 25. So this year's sense of optimism that I feel hasn't been there in a number of years.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the wall behind Stuart too, which is impressive down in the man cave, so to speak. But the wall is green too. Is that because of the Jets, or is that a coincidence? You have a lot of Jets footballs up there.
I just have a lot of Jets stuff, and you can see I have a piece of the 2003 floor from the Syracuse National Championship.
Oh, hey,
very cool,
very nice, Carmelo and company.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, with that, let's move on to the picks, and because the listeners are still in the lead, Stuart, you get to go first.
All right, we're going to start with the Vikings -3 at the Commanders. Just think the Vikings are a way better team than them. They're also relatively healthy. Washington beat Indy 17-16 in Sam Ehlinger's first start. I think Kirk Cousins is way too much for them to handle. Their average margin of victory is over a touchdown. So I'm going to go with the Vikings on the road at the Commanders. And then I'm going to go with the Chiefs at home -11.5 against the Titans. I know Tannehill didn't practice yesterday. Don't know if he's going to practice today. If he doesn't play, Malik Willis was 6 of 10 for 55 yards. That's not going to cut it against Kansas City, even if Tannehill is playing. They're not built to play from behind. They need to run the ball, and I can't see them keeping up with the Kansas City's offense. And then finally, I'm going to take the Seahawks +2 at Arizona. Just think the Seahawks are really playing great right now. Watching Geno Smith play makes me want to cry.
Good.
He had one last week that Tyler Lockett dropped. It would have been even worse than it was. It was a walk-in touchdown. He's playing at a very, very high level right now, which is, it's really great to see because, he's taken his lumps and he was patient. So good for him. And I'm going to take them with the 2 on the road at Arizona, who they already beat by 10 earlier this year in week 6.
Yeah. I have that one.
The BetMGM has the Chiefs -12.5, but Stuart, we'll give you the 11.5.
I'll take 12.5. It's fine.
If it comes down to that point, we'll negotiate. But I feel like it won't one way or the other. All right, Zach, you're up next.
All right, I'm gonna go Dolphins -4 against the Bears. I think the Dolphins are looking really, really good right now, and the Bears seem like they're tanking. I mean, I guess they traded for Chase Claypool. I'm gonna do the
second round pick for Chase
just to infuriate Packers fans. I think they did that
I'm gonna go Seahawks +2 as well. The fact that they're underdogs against the Cardinals is wild to me.
Yeah, I have that one.
And there's a couple other games that intrigue me, but I'll say the Panthers +7.5 against the Bengals. Panthers have been pretty competitive since they fired Rule. The Bengals don't have Jamar Chase. They are pretty banged up across the board, so I'll go with that one.
They looked terrible on Monday night. Of course,
awful.
Connor would say that was all because of Michael Dunn and everything else. But the Browns rolled over them. All right, I have one pick from each of your guys' picks, so we'll get into that. Here we go. Vikings. I got -3.5 Vikings at Washington. I actually have 3 road favorites here. I hate going for all these road teams, but every week I feel like I do things that I purposely know I shouldn't, and I still make the picks. Vikings -3.5, Dolphins -4 at the Bears. And then my third one, Packers minus 3.5 at Detroit. I just feel like eventually, right? Like they can't be this bad all season. If you're going to right the ship, it's at the team that you've just whipped for 20 years, right? The Lions in the division. So Packers minus 3.5 will be my third one. Marissa.
Well, I'm not doing that great this year, and I have a combination of literally every single one of you.
I don't know if you know that.
Oh, God. Okay, thanks, Dad.
Loser. Oh my God.
He's just jealous.
He's
sitting out there like
Add him out of the
seeing
audio.
Nothing. He talks every day about how practice is pointless. So
he's sitting out there like, oh, all my friends are talking without.
Yeah.
How can I be funny and go in there? What should I say?
Yeah, he thought the whole walk back what he was going to say for sure.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I have a combination of literally every single one of you guys. I have Seattle +2 at Arizona, Green Bay -3 at Detroit, and Panthers +7.5 at Cincy. So I don't know. Maybe that's a good sign for me that like I'm on you guys' wavelength, because my wavelength has not been correct this year. But
long season.
Yeah, we shall see. So
we're turning it around this week. We're getting things going. Pick things up. All right. I think that's it. We already talked about Strevler. Anything else, Zach, to add before we
game predictions? I think.
Yeah, I guess I think the prediction I've been saying was Bills 31, Jets 17.
Which would be Bills covering, right? The spread right now is 10.5.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, Bills would cover, yeah.
That's the thing, that spread's killer, because I could see with the Jets defense, they hang around for a half.
Yeah.
But then I just feel like
pull
late
away in the
this
second
game,
half, yeah.
Yeah, Buffalo, it gets away from a little bit. So I think you're right on there with that. Stuart, final thoughts on the game?
It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be all about turnovers for the Jets over the last few weeks. You know, for them, it's all been about special teams and explosive plays in the running game, and the loss of Breece Hall has just been a real killer for them. Hopefully Zach can play a clean game, and as you said, the defense keep him in it late in the fourth quarter. Hopefully the Jets can pull one out, but it's going to be an uphill battle for sure.
We will talk all about it next week. I think as of now, we are scheduled for Monday morning for the next episode, unless there's something comes up between now and then. But that's the plan. Monday morning, be back with us. We'll break down the Bills game. We'll talk about what went right, what went wrong, and all of that here on the Can't Wait podcast. Talk to you all then.